us live from the Heartland with Tom Clark, Katie Hogan, and Michael James, with our special guest, Jennifer Murtoff, Mariyana Spyropoulos, and John Graham. In the background here, from his award-winning 1971 album, Alarm Clock, this is Richie Havens with Here Comes the Sun.
Little darling, it seems like years since they've been there. Here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say,
it's alright. Oh yeah,
it's alright.
It is alright. And it is Saturday morning at Live from the Heartland. Once again, we've got a great lineup. We've got Jennifer Murtoff talking about chickens, Mariyana Spyropoulos talking about water, John Graham singing some songs and bringing us down memory lane and into the future. Hi, Chicago. It's a great day for sun to show up sometime. So from your lips to her ears, Richie Havens, let the sun shine in. Hello,
Right
Michael.
on.
Hello, Thomas.
Good morning, Katie. Hogan.
Yeah, well, this is the 30th anniversary of the Berlin Wall.
Pretty amazing.
It is amazing. I'm reading a book that tells us about the other things that started around then. Winners take all. I recommend it, Americans. This is election year.
A lot of talk in the papers about Germany and still the East and the West not really coming together as they might. The rise of the right in East Germany.
Or everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. And a lot of great pictures in every newspaper the last day or so
Oh, yeah?
about the fall of the wall, people running, coming over.
And then there's the news, of course, that the president is going to do a special visit in late spring to commemorate the end of World War II. Is he going to do it in Europe for VE Day? No. He's going to accept Putin's invitation to go to Moscow. He's finally going to get his military parade.
You should have seen Bill Maher on that. He wants to go to May Day, he says. May Day.
Well, here in Chicago,
There you go.
we got our mayor, Lori Lightfoot, has named former Los Angeles Police Chief Charlie Beck as an interim superintendent to replace Eddie Johnson, who is retiring. Beck is said to have transformed the Los Angeles Police Department after that city's Rodney King and police scandals. Local aldermen here, I think most of them want a local chief, not an outsider. A couple names to remember about outsiders: Jody Weiss, Gary McCarthy. I'd go with local.
Well, we're not making the decision, are we?
We certainly aren't.
Yeah.
But
Well,
what we think and say might make a difference.
I hope
I'm
Betty
glad-
Johnson rests well. He looks like he needs it.
The mayor had an opportunity to say she will not do a ROM. She will look at the recommendations of the police board and make her decision from that list.
Okay. So, on another topic, Tom? do you-
Well,
Where's the juice?
There's been this ongoing discussion, and with the fall veto session going on, is there going to be ethics legislation or not? What I find interesting about the federal investigation, which started in a few different places, is that right now it seems to be working through the ComEd lobbyist network right up to Speaker Madigan. Many of those lobbyists happen to have Madigan connections. So it's very intriguing how this whole thing that started, one would think, with Ed Burke and then kind of moved on to Danny Solis. And of course, it cost, in a related matter, a state rep his job over the last 2 weeks, who was caught bribing. Now it looks like there may actually be enough pressure to have some ethics legislation. We'll see if the governor really pushes it this veto session or not, or if they're going to wait and see what kind of federal indictments come down. It's a very interesting time, but it's all this pay to play, and it's really interesting. I think the feds are going after the lobbyists for one of the major utilities who've really worked undercover for such a long time, but clearly with Madigan's blessing. So
I have a lot of questions about that, so I'm going to promise listeners that we're going to get more information about
we
that.
should bring on an expert or two to talk some more
Maybe.
about this one.
Or we should just get deeper information. Speaking of ethics, who does these days? There's a new book called A Warning out by Anonymous. Anonymous is the same Anonymous who wrote
The op-ed in the New York Times.
in the New York Times a year ago, or is it that long?
It's actually a
No.
couple years now.
Is it? Well, the warning is viewed as a chilling portrait of the president as cruel, inept, and a danger to the nation he was elected to lead. Who's that quote from? The back of the book?
It is from the book itself.
Yeah. Well, tell us something we don't know. I mean, really. The allegations are spread across, not quite 300 pages. Senior Trump administration officials considered resigning en masse last year in a midnight self-massacre, but rejected the idea because they believed it would further destabilize our already teetering government. And, of course, the book details many meetings with POTUS degrading women. Again, no surprise. Okay, Anonymous, thank you for your input.
As we move forward in this self-impeachment process, it's beginning to go public this week. It's become clearer and clearer to me the value of civil servants and the importance of these career diplomats and others who have stepped up to talk about what's really going on.
God bless the whistleblowers.
Just in passing, we want to point out that those who feel like we've done with that racism thing, we had this ugly incident in Naperville that shows that people keep trying to move away from what they perceive to be a problem, and it still stares them in the face because we're all people. We ought to be figuring out how to live with each other rather than finding more walls to divide us. By the way, did you see that notice that they figured out how to use a Sawzall to get through the new wall on the Mexican border?
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah.
That didn't take long, did it? And we want to applaud our colleagues at the Loyola Phoenix for a very fascinating editorial, which has caused a lot of local discussion about the lack of local owners for the retail space along Sheridan Road as it's been built up by Loyola University, amongst others, over the last few years. This is an ongoing discussion that I think Rogers Park and the Business Alliance and others are always talking about and concerned about. But it's a real factor.
It's like a drive-through mall. You drive up there, you make that turn on Sheridan Road going north, and it's just like all these stores that it doesn't remind you at all of the old days when we had some good times in that little section of turf.
Well, it's hard to see potential local owners get squeezed out because rising property taxes and rents means that only national chains can afford those spaces. But I do think it's an important future economic development issue for the neighborhood.
Totally.
We got a couple of announcements about things going on. Today, November 9th, from 10 to 4, is the 66th annual annual Chicago Powwow. The American Indian Center is hosting it at Von Steuben High School. That would be fun to go to. If you've never been to a powwow, you may want to check that out.
Something that's going on today in the neighborhood, which we should have announced last week because you need to sign up for it ahead of time, is the 4th Annual Expungement and Sealing Summit. It's at Gale Community Academy, but honestly, I'm not being helpful because you needed to have put together your papers before it. I'm just glad we keep doing it. Thank you, elected officials.
And you could stop by and say hello to the alderman who's stopping by.
Yeah, there you go.
Really interesting discussion about shifting north side demographics. Rob Perrell is one of the best demographers in the area and really knows how to translate stuff so that regular people can understand it. He will be at the Edgewater Library today at 2 p.m.
November 14th at 7 p.m., there's a Loyola Climate Crisis Panel at 1032 West Sheridan Road, 7 p.m. Also,
on Friday the 15th, we have a Protect the Vote turnout at the Hideout. I forget which group is sponsoring this, but it's a 2-hour workshop on making sure we're all aware of how to protect our vote going into the next election cycle.
yeah, that's something we need to talk more about too, but we don't have time. The last couple things we're going to mention: November 16th at from 11 to 4 p.m., Independent Living Day at Potawatomi Park. All those who are looking for accessible housing, help for accessibility issues around the map, that is your day. November 16th, 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Potawatomi.
And you can learn how to make applesauce and have lunch with neighbors and talk about a resilient Rogers Park at the P.O. Box Collective on November 16th from 11 to 2. Preparing for climate change is the theme of this particular canning demonstration.
And a
What do
heads
you
up
mean? It's
on
the theme for life these days.
A heads up, November 19th, 7 p.m., a fair tax for Illinois with budget expert Ralph Martiri. Network 49 is putting this on, the Living Water Community Church.
Beautiful. Okay. Stay warm through our early polar vortex. That's coming up next week. So what you really should enjoy is today's spring-like weather, today and tomorrow, because after that, better have all your laundry
You'll be
done.
freezing.
Yeah.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW at 80.7 FM. Let's have a happy day.
Happy day to you.
Oh, a little happy day by Sheba, who's from Trinidad. Wonderful CD I play with my grandson all the time called Reggae Playground. Songs from around the world. It's a really upbeat, get your day going kind of a thing. And we figured that was appropriate because we're going to talk about raising chickens and other livestock, if I dare use that word, with Jennifer Murtoff, who is with Home to Roost Chickens, amongst other hats that she wears. We want to talk a bit today about the city's efforts to maybe regulate those of us who keep chickens in our backyard for eggs or other pleasures of life. Jennifer, welcome to Life from the Heartland.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Nice to have you, Jen.
Thank you.
So I think I want to start by asking, how did you get into the birds?
Well, I was raised in South Central Pennsylvania, and my grandfather was a farmer. I grew up with chickens. I had chickens from age 10 till I was in college. And when I moved to the city, I found out people were keeping chickens in their backyards, and one of my friends said, "Well, you could be a chicken consultant."
Yeah, let's do this.
So tell us about your setup. How many hens do you have? How long have you been doing this?
Well, sadly enough, I don't have any chickens myself. I was living in an apartment for a long time, and I finally purchased a home on my own back in 2015. So currently I have quail and parakeets. And I've been doing the chicken keeping business since about 2008, and I've had a lot of clients in the meantime and have done some successful projects with places such as the Cook County Jail. I worked with the Chicago Botanic Garden, Morton Arboretum, so it's been a fun ride.
We'll get back to talk about the jail project in a moment, but we were those of us who do hens were surprised when the city decided to begin regulating what many suburbs have been trying to do for a while or have actually done, where there are limits on how many hens you can have in the backyard. Can you explain briefly what the city seems to be trying to do? And I want to talk a little bit about the status of the ordinance.
Well, there are two aldermen, actually, Alderman Lopez from the 15th Ward and Alderman Napolitano from the 41st, who recently proposed a new livestock ordinance or changes to the existing ordinance that would sort of make it more difficult for people to keep livestock, including chickens, in the city. The high points are this new ordinance would outright ban roosters. It would require people keeping chickens to have a livestock permit, and there would be a fee of $25 per animal. Now, keep in mind that fees for dogs is only $5, so I'm not sure
That's
why.
crazy.
Yeah, why are we charging more for a chicken, which produces less waste and is, not as prone to biting people or running loose around the neighborhood. It would also cap the number of fowl at 6 and other livestock at 2, which would put my friend Carolyn, who has a business raising her own goats for dairy products, I would put her out of business. And there's other stipulations. One would require anyone applying for a permit to contact all residents within 500 feet of their property line, which puts an incredibly undue burden on people who do want to have livestock in the city.
That's what they require for people looking for a liquor license.
Liquor license, chickens,
Jennifer, why do you think these people are doing this? Was this bill introduced? What's the motivation to be so stringent around it? Doesn't seem rational at all.
I do know that there are a number of problems. Alderman Lopez has flagged out a number of issues in his ward. In particular, there was a big cockfighting ring that was recently busted there. Now, if you look at the existing regulations, the existing ordinances, cockfighting is already illegal. So that takes care of that.
Today is the last day in Puerto Rico.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's
Great.
No more.
Great. And then there's also there's also issues of noise, which we also have an existing ordinance that takes care of noise issues. If noise is a nuisance, if we've got barking dogs or crowing roosters,
Or garbage trucks at 6:30 a.m.
yes, or leaf blowers at 5
All day
a.m.
long.
Right. So those things are already taken care of by existing legislation. There's also, part of the ordinance includes requiring anyone selling products from livestock or fowl, such as eggs, milk, or butter, to obtain an urban farm business license. And there's already a zoning code that zones urban farms. So I feel like the ordinance that's been proposed adds a lot of undue burden to people who already do this.
And cost.
And cost, exactly. And some people are doing it as a subsistence. They want the eggs because it's expensive to buy food.
Right.
So they want to have chickens in their backyard. And they also want to do a good thing for the environment by sourcing food locally. So there's a number of things this proposed ordinance butts up against.
Is there some kind of compromise in the offing? Do you think?
They had mentioned a compromise. Currently, this issue was not placed on the agenda for the November 6th meeting. The 11/18 meeting has been canceled, but I believe that was just like a committee
Scheduling
meeting.
thing.
So as far as I know, it's still in draft. Kelly Gandersky, who's Chicago Animal Care and Control
Okay.
Director, had said that she thought it, quote unquote, will be a while. So I'm not sure what's going to happen to this proposed ordinance.
I'm curious to know about what kind of resistance or response there is to this. I mean, how many people are there that grow, have livestock? How many people out there are supportive of others having livestock? And are there 4-H clubs in the city?
Yeah, just pull those figures out of your pocket there.
Well, make some estimate or give me a little information. And then what about 4-H clubs in city? And there's some agricultural programs in schools.
You got one question for her, Michael?
I can handle it. I got
All
it.
right,
I'm
all
all
right.
good.
It all fits together, Kate.
It does. So, one of the biggest groups of people is the Chicagoland Chicken Enthusiasts, and that group has been headed by Martha Boyd with Angelic Organics Learning Center. We had about 750 contributing members on a regular basis to that. So there's a large support base here. And from let me see if I could find. I thought I
think
had
it's fair to say that in a city of 3 billion, there are hundreds of chicken farmers.
Indeed, yes. I've got probably a good 800 on my personal mailing list. And then we have hosted the Windy City Coop Tour since 2008. We had 108 tour sites participating since 2008.
And is that kind of all over the city, or
It's
is
all
it
over the city.
centered in one side or not?
No, it's all over the city. We
That's
try to
good to
get
know.
as far west as Oak Park,
Uh-huh.
down into the south side, north side. We try to cover all bases. So
Cool.
there's people all over the city who are keeping chickens. I've also taught a number of classes and workshops with Angelic Organics Learning Center. Through that organization alone, I've taught over 300 people. I've also taught, I would probably guess, as many as 300 more at the Botanic Garden, the Morton Arboretum, and through local public libraries.
You rock.
So there is a large support base.
I'm just
for-
curious, how is it that aldermen get, or some aldermen get exercised about chickens, and what we've got in our neighborhood, certainly, and I don't think we're alone, is a huge rat population. I mean, how about we start regulating those guys instead of people who are taking care of livestock in their own backyards?
And that's a good question, Kathy. The rats, I think the rats were part of Alderman Lopez's concern. There was a study done by the, let me find this here one second.
study by the Urban Wildlife Institute at the Lincoln Park Zoo. And this study that determined that overwhelming contributors to rats are garbage and buildings, not the livestock.
Humans, in other words.
Yes, and also dog waste. So yes, we should be looking more at working to eliminate the rat population and the food sources that feed the rat population, rather than trying to limit urban livestock keeping, because a lot of these people are trying to do this in a way that is appropriate. And then you've got all of these umbrella organizations and urban agriculture organizations that are also working hard to educate the base.
I want to talk briefly about your work at Cook County Jail, because this was a fascinating project. Well, with that intro, what was the project you set up there, and how's it going?
So the project was, it was a chicken keeping program to help low-risk offenders sort of learn some skills around animal husbandry. Also, they were working on doing an egg project where they would be processing the eggs per USDA regulations. And then they had hoped to sell them to the public and also use them in the jail. So it was a really wonderful project. I got to meet some really interesting people who were inmates at the jail, and in particular, there was one man who was so enthusiastic about keeping chickens, and it was really heartening to see him really take interest in the program and in keeping the birds. He had chickens growing up. And it was just really wonderful to see how he connected with that particular part of the program. As far as what's currently going on, the jail has since taken the program over themselves, and I'm kind of out of the picture. So I can't speak to what they're currently doing, but I think it's a wonderful opportunity to help inmates learn life skills.
If folks want to get on your chicken enthusiast list or participate in the petition drive to stop this ordinance, how can they do that?
They can go to my blog, which is htrchickens.com, or just Google Home to Roost and my last name, Murtoff.
I found it right away.
The other thing, they can find information there to both sign up for my blog, and also there are a number of posts about how to sign a letter to propose or to oppose the existing or the proposed ordinance. They can also find information about contacting their alderman. There's a joint statement that urban livestock organizations have issued together. And we've got tips and pointers on there as well. The other place they can look for more information is the Chicago Chicken Enthusiast Google group. There is a part of the site is called Policies in City Chickens, and that talks about the issues and policies within the city and other suburbs as well.
Jennifer Murtoff, Home to Roost Chickens. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much. This
We're
has been
going to
fun.
call on you again to keep current with this topic.
Excellent.
Okay?
Yes.
Thank
Excellent.
you so much.
Thank you.
You're listening to Live from the Heartland on WLUW Chicago 88.7 FM. It is a happy day.
Jah live, children, Jah live in the hearts of I and I. America, them ask if we speak patois. Jewy Rasta, and we leave America, them ask if we speak patois. Hey, easy no man, I said easy woman, just come make we sing this song. Cause it shouldn't matter where you come from, just come make we do this one. Jah live, children, Jah live in the hearts of I and I. Jewy Rasta, and we sing about Africa, them ask for the answer. Jewy Rasta, and we sing about Africa, them ask for the answer.
We're back here with more Live from the Heartland.
I did the wrong thing. That was through We Rasta from Funkadesi from their Heartland album.
Oh, how nice.
Uncut Roots.
Yeah.
I remember when we used to have all those bands coming through the Heartland and
Yeah,
playing.
one of them's coming up next.
Yeah, well, it's just a little advance warning.
But right now, we have Mariyana Spyropoulos, who is a South Side girl like me originally.
Absolutely.
Sounds like. She went to the high school I didn't go to.
But your sisters did.
Yes, but all my sisters did. Mariyana is a commissioner of the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. has now been reelected, so you've been elected twice, right?
Correct, yes.
Now, some of you are familiar with our regular guest, Deborah Shore, who has been on that same body for a number of sessions. I think last time she was elected 4 times. Okay. What we've liked watching as we keep track of this is increasingly environmentalists being elected to this. Do you count as an
Josephine Morita.
environmentalist, my dear?
If you mean, am I concerned about the environment and do I take action that I always think will take the environment into consideration? Yes.
What were your reservations there, though, when do you have any, you're a full-fledged environmentalist?
I guess I'm hesitant to sort of boast that I'm an environmentalist because I think that means so much more knowledge than I probably have.
Oh, that's
I
fair.
appreciate that.
But you know about water.
I know a
particularly
little bit about water.
And particularly the water after we're finished using it at least once, and what happens to it.
I know a little bit about that too.
Not to break this down to two simple building blocks, but part of the reason we're having this show is I took this wonderful tour as part of Open House Chicago of the O'Brien Works that many people are familiar with on the corner, the big old brick building on the corner of McCormick and Howard.
Yes.
People don't know what's really going on in that facility, which is acres and acres and acres behind that cyclone fence. Can you describe briefly what that
Absolutely.
whole process is, what's happening there with all the water that comes through sewers and out of the sky in the North Shore?
And so that's where we met recently. And I appreciate you taking an interest and coming to, I think it was Chicago Architecture Foundation was one of the partners. And we had an open house, as you pointed out, at our plant. And we had a lot of people show up and wanted to see what happens behind that fence, which they probably drive by every day on their way somewhere. And I hope they found it interesting because I think it's probably, and this has been said by a lot of people, it's probably one of the most important agencies that a lot of people don't know about. We do 2 things. We treat wastewater and we manage stormwater. So take that in for a second and digest that. And what does that mean? Everything from your toilet, your sink, your dishwasher, your washing machine, and your shower goes down the drain, goes into your local sewer system, and it is then connected to an interceptor. This is all throughout Cook County, and goes to one of our treatment plants. Gets cleaned up in the process, and I'd be happy to get into detail, but some of your listeners probably just had breakfast, so you probably don't want to hear too much of that. But the point is, this is probably one of the most important things.
This show's for us, too, though, so we like learning, so you
Okay.
can fill us in.
Okay, all of that gets cleaned up. Solids and liquids get separated. Solids become fertilizer or goes into a landfill, depending on what it is. Liquid becomes effluent. We don't call it water because it's not 100% clean, but it's very close to that. And I can talk about what we do with that as well. We're trying to find secondary sources to use that effluent in either construction or technology cooling buildings. You don't need drinking water for those
Right.
purposes. So that
Right.
would be a smart thing to do. But you got to make it cost effective for a business to transport that volume to whatever plant, company that they're at. So, there's a lot of components.
Right.
You can't look at one thing and say, okay, we're doing this and we're done. It's all connected. You have to look at it organically and how it fits into a larger system,
So here-
into a larger region, et cetera.
So one piece of it that was fascinating to me, because people have heard about deep tunnel, and when there's a big rain, they know there's a big cavern or 2 or 3 around the county where
May not be big enough.
stuff gets stored for a while, so it
That's
can
the
be
stormwater
processed.
management component of our facility, so.
But there's some stuff you do at the O'Brien plant that's never quite cleaned up, and you send it over 18 miles of pipe out to Stickney to get treated some more. I never knew that kind of infrastructure was going on, but presumptively below the surface somewhere.
Yes, we have 109 miles of intersecting tunnels throughout the county that we use for the stormwater management. But there are some of the facilities, for example, O'Brien. Stickney is the largest plant in the world. So if you ever go on a tour, I would recommend you go there as well. And any of you or your listeners that would like a tour of one of our plants, I'd be happy to set that up. just go to our website, mwrd.org, and contact my office or any our PR department, and we are happy to set that up. We take groups of, not just an individual, but if you have a school group, a class, a church group, community group, any kind of group, we'd be happy to give a tour. So yes, we do have a very large infrastructure underneath where we're sitting today.
Now, you claim to do a really good job within 99% of cleaning up the water that ends up in the North Shore Channel. That's where it ultimately ends up after you've done all your filtration and UV treatments and all that. How successful are you actually in removing nutrients? And you already heard this question earlier, microplastics or pharmaceuticals or other things that end up in all those pipes that you were talking about.
So we're doing a good job. I think we could do an excellent job. So that means we have more work to do. And we're not alone in facing that throughout the United States. Excuse me. We recently had a conference here in Chicago. It's called WEFTEC, Water Environment Federation. It's sort of like the Super Bowl for water nerds. So we go to that every other year. It's either in New Orleans or Chicago, and this year it was in Chicago. And so my point is that most water treatment plants throughout the United States are facing the two things that you pointed out. Pharmaceutical use is on the uprise throughout the United States. People are taking more medications. Our facilities are not 100% set up to extract all those pharmaceuticals. So one thing we can do, we can't control what goes through your body and is not absorbed and goes through our system. We can try to get people to not dispose of their unused pharmaceuticals or expired pharmaceuticals by either dropping them off at a proper disposal site. All of our facilities are drop-off sites. If you have any unused medication, bring it to either a Walgreens or a CVS.
In other words, don't flush it down the toilet.
That's the message, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
But people don't know, what do I do with it? You can throw it in the garbage, but bring it to a site that properly disposes, a low emission site that won't contribute to, air pollution. So that's one thing. The microplastics, that's a really big problem as well, because microplastics microbeads have been banned, but they're in a lot of products. You don't realize that propylethylene and various other products are basically plastic, and they're in a lot of personal care products. So the burden sometimes goes on the consumers. You have to now become very knowledgeable on your labels, look at what's in the product. And that's very tough for people, because
Right.
sometimes some of those products are pricey. And so, is it fair to put that burden on people?
Yes. Yes, it is.
But we also, as an agency, need to look into that, and how can we, and that's something at this WEFTEC conference we're looking at, to see how can we upgrade our systems, which are very costly, to make sure that we are now anticipating all these new chemicals that are coming through the system to extract them. We're not getting them all out at this point.
I want to talk politics a little bit.
Okay.
You're in your second term. You briefly toyed with running for Dorothy Brown's spot.
Yes.
And then pulled out. Do you care to comment on the other 6 or 7 people, it seems like, that are running for this long-term office holder's position for clerk of the circuit court?
So it's my understanding that there are about, I think, 4 people that I'm aware of that are running for the spot. Dorothy Brown had the spot for a long time, and she decided not to run, so there was an opportunity to run. My mom has suffered a couple of strokes, so as an only child, it's my responsibility to take care of
get
her.
that.
So balancing being a commissioner, another campaign, taking care of her, something had to give. I'm passionate about public service. I think I have a lot of ideas and things to offer, so I want to stay a commissioner. I thought that the run for the clerk's spot was not something that I could fully commit to, so I decided not to run. And we'll see. Now the candidates are in the petition signature collecting stage. That is a daunting task because they need at least 7,000 signatures, give or take. And as you all well know, you need at least 2 or 3 times that many signatures to sort of protect yourself from getting kicked off the ballot. We'll see who survives that.
So Michael Carbonaggi got the county nod.
Correct.
But Jacob Meister's also in there.
Yes.
Along with Todd Stroger and
Richard
Boykin.
Boykin, and Iris
Iris
Martinez.
Martinez.
Yes, Iris Martinez.
Teresa Slaw, anybody?
I've heard that
Slaw.
name, but I haven't seen any. I
Okay.
haven't seen her anywhere, so I'm not really sure if she's.
So do you have a horse in that race?
No, everyone has called me to get my endorsement, and I'm holding off on that right now.
Not that it's, I'm going to go back to water.
Sure.
Even though it's not technically part of your mission at Metropolitan Water Reclamation, we cannot avoid the fact that the lake is
My question.
overrunning its boundaries. It's like a full bowl of soup sloshing
You're right.
around, and the rivers and creeks connected.
Mm-hmm.
How does that? What are the implications for our sewer system and all the water reclamation work that you do when that's in play the way it is right now?
So climate change absolutely affects our processes. So I said we treat wastewater and we manage stormwater. If you know anything about the sewer system, throughout the county, we have what they call a combined sewer system, which means we have stormwater and wastewater together in one system. One of the reasons that we flood is because we have old infrastructure. We have infrastructure that didn't anticipate these larger volumes of stormwater that's competing for space along with your wastewater in the same. So you have a backup, it goes into people's homes, it goes into the streets. So you got the infrastructure, you have the clay level that we have in this region, so that can't absorb a lot of stormwater, it can absorb some, but the third thing is, and this is what I talk about where I say it's all connected, you can't really just look at one component in isolation, is that 40% of Cook County has been developed. So you have less surface for that stormwater to absorb into the ground. So when you have larger volumes of stormwater, you're going to have more backup. Think of emptying a pool with a straw. That's the aged infrastructure is the straw, and you have all this volume of water. It'd be very difficult. You're going to have overflow. So the stormwater management ordinance is something that we passed, where if you're a new developer, you want to build a structure, you're going to use asphalt or concrete, you're taking away surface where the water would absorb.
Right.
You then have to compensate with green infrastructure. You have to put a green roof, you have to put permeable pavement in the parking lot, something to compensate for
Thank God.
the water that and that's for new development. So we are absolutely being affected by that. We have now, and this is in the last 10 years, you're talking about environmentalists now being elected to the board,
Right.
we have shifted to green infrastructure as a tool that will help reduce flooding. We send a call out to all the communities that we serve, because we serve the city of Chicago and 125 surrounding suburbs, and we ask them, are there projects in your community that would help reduce flooding? And they respond by saying, yes, we have a police station, we want to make that parking lot a permeable surface. We help them with the funding.
Yeah, cool.
So they submit it to us. We have basically a formula that we put it through. How many structures are you affecting? Is there an income level that is prevalent in this area? How much flooding, excuse me, is this going to how much flooding is this going to reduce the effect on the community? And if it satisfies certain criteria, then we'll help them. And we've done that for several years, and it's been very popular. So green infrastructure is one of the tools to affect flooding. We've got the Deep Tunnel Project. That's sort of like the gray infrastructure part of it. 109 miles of intersecting tunnels, 3 reservoirs that collectively will hold over 20 billion gallons of water. It sounds like a lot of water, but 1 inch of rain throughout Cook County is 14 billion gallons of water.
Yeah.
Now, not all of that is coming to our structure, but there's a lot of rain, and with climate change, that's going to increase. Now, the lake levels are eroding the shoreline. We know that. We see that. I know that some of the aldermen recently put forth a plan to try to rebuild Oak Street Beach with a lot more green and a lot more land to try to buffer the shore. We'll have to see how that can be paid for, whether that's something that survives sort of scrutiny to make sure that it's something that will address the problem. But in terms of climate change, there's so many things that you have to look at. You have to look at population growth. You have to look at our emissions. I think the president recently took us out of the Paris Accord. And so, I mean, I guess that's a whole nother conversation.
Indeed. Well, you do touch on something that again, how do we, given everything you just said and more that we know, how do we protect our watershed? We're the Great Lakes bioregion. We've got 20% of the world's freshwater supply at our foot. How do we protect that watershed from private interests, from Nestle sticking their straw in Lake Michigan, as the state of Michigan let them do a couple of years ago?
A long time.
Well, that's, I think you can do it on many different levels. I mean, in terms of like what you're putting into the water supply would be sort of at a very micro level in terms of residents and what they do, people change the oil in their car and they dump it into the local sewer. I don't think that people are doing this, with any ill intent, but I think they're not thinking it through in terms of where that's going.
That's the kindest way to put it.
So that's just like one very small level. In terms of, how can you conserve water? You're brushing your teeth, turn the faucet off until you're ready to rinse, you can save 5 gallons of water. If everyone did that, that would have an impact. Then, talk to your legislators in terms of never having our water be privatized. I mean, I know that has been something that has been discussed, and I recall not so long ago where certain elected officials said that nothing is off the table in terms of we need funding for our city, and I think that absolutely our water supply should never be touched by private industry.
Thank you.
I think it's sort of something that is a public trust for us to protect.
Yeah. How many seats are up for voters in the next cycle, and is that in March?
It is in March.
Yeah.
There are 3 seats. So there are 9 commissioners. We are all elected county-wide. We don't have districts. And the reason for that, I know there's debate with regards to that. The reason is, by virtue of what we do and what we handle, you can't divide it by political boundaries or anything like that. It has to
Water
be done
goes
countywide.
where it wants.
Exactly.
Right.
You took my line.
Sorry.
That's okay. And
She's good at that.
there's three people are up every 2 years, 6-year terms.
Well, this has been too quick. Mariyana Spyropoulos, thank you so much for your service to the community on the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District.
Thank you.
Shine on, Commissioner. And
Thank you.
Keep us safe. We're going to listen to something. I don't want to make a mistake again. I think it's Pocket Full of Jewels. Our next guest, John Graham, coming up to you on Live from the Heartland, WLUW 88.7 FM.
Thank you.
I got a pocket full of jewels. I'm gonna scatter to the sea. I got a whole lot of time to be free. I talk to the sun, and I sing to the sky.
And we are back. You're listening to Pocket Full of Jewels. And John Graham has joined us right here in the studio. Welcome, John.
Hello.
Last time I saw you, I was getting all sweaty dancing to music in the Heartland Cafe, which was always one of my favorite nights in the Heartland, was when we pushed back the tables and the dance floor would be full. And to Uncle John's band, we danced many times.
Right.
That Pocket Full of Jewels came out in 1993.
Mm-hmm.
So you're coming back to On Tour. What does that mean?
On Tour Brewing is it's a really nice new brewery up on
Hubbard?
Yeah, it's on Hubbard between Ashland and Damon.
1725 West Hubbard. it
Yeah,
says
very
here.
cool place, awesome beer. I'm playing there Sunday the 17th from 2 to 5 in the afternoon.
Now, do you still surround yourself with a gang of other lovers of Grateful Dead and Allman Brothers and James Taylor and all those kind of people that you guys often played?
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
are you a solo dude?
I'm a solo dude mostly these days.
Yeah.
I did 13 years with Uncle John's band, and then I did another 17 years with a band called Jack Straw around here in town. But raising two sons the whole time, and pretty much have settled it down to the solo acoustic thing. Though there is a collaboration in the works possibly to get something else going band-wise, but we'll see. It's in its infancy.
You don't miss being on the road with a bunch of guys?
Yeah, I kind of do miss that some. You know, it was fun. It was great.
You got started as a singer in
Yeah.
grammar school in a choir,
Indeed.
and then ended up in a big part at a pretty young age.
Right.
I dug this out of your bio, and I'm fascinated because I think
Yeah.
Leonard Bernstein's The Mass is one of the more underappreciated
Yes.
pieces of modern music.
Yeah, underexposed.
And you got to do that phenomenal soprano, I'll call it an aria, but I'm not sure if that's appropriate within the context of what Bernstein was doing, but phenomenal song that is in the early part of this piece. How did you get that gig? What was it like to be on such a stage at the Kennedy Center at the age of, 12, 14, something like
12, yeah. It was just an incredible kind of a confluence of everything coming together at once. I was in a choir boy at the St. Luke's Church in Evanston, and at the same time there was a choir out east called the Berkshire Boy Choir that was created by a couple patrons of the arts out there, and they put together a choir of men and boys that was fashioned on the King's College, Cambridge concept. Men and boys, you know, very
Brit.
very Brit and very awesome music. In fact, we had a Brit come over and direct us all summer. But anyway, they came out and auditioned 1,000 kids all over the country for that choir. And so I made that choir, and we sang 8 hours a day and toured up. I was out there for 8.5 weeks. It was in a camp setting. We were at Amherst College at a dorm.
Wow, that must have been formative for you.
It was great. I mean, it was really kind of even more musically intense than Mass, really, because we just sang so much music, and we toured all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, the choir. But then just
that? A moving interlocking.
Huh?
A moving interlocking.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, at the same time, Bernstein, was consigned by Jackie Onassis to write his Mass to open the John F. Kennedy Center in 1971. There's a part in it for 23 choir boys, so he needed some choir boys. So they plucked 23 of us out of Berkshire Boy Choir. We were just exactly in the right place at the right time. We went up to Washington, rehearsed like 8-10 hours a day, to get this thing ready. Bernstein was in the rehearsal rooms playing the piano while Stephen Schwartz choreographed us, and Alvin Ailey himself choreographed our parts.
Whoa.
So 3 of the boys, one of them being me, we practiced the solo part. There's a boy soprano solo part in it, and they just kept picking me to do it, and I ended up doing it for the first 13 shows. Opened up the Opera House, and then we subsequently recorded it, and so
God,
I'm on the recording team.
That was a lot to get past as a, I mean, you did that when you were 12.
So I had a strong start.
John, what did you do between Uncle John's band and the next band and your solo career?
Yeah, Uncle John's.
Do you make a living off of the music?
Yeah, so Uncle John's band kind of, for me, dwindled around 1994. I took a year off, basically, and then I came back, and I kind of started working up my solo book, because there's a lot of songs I wanted to perform that I really couldn't do in UJB, because that was really, Allman Brothers and Grateful Dead, and that's, and a few other things. But there was all
so great.
Yeah, it was great.
Band.
Well, it was a good band. Yeah, we were fortunate to have a really good set of guys.
That was in the Craig Perry era.
No, it was 85.
Yeah, so we started in 82. We came up through Chicago in 85. That band kind of broke up, and then I kept it going, got a whole new group of guys, and we kept it going until 94. So
Can we hear a little bit of your solo music?
Yes.
I understand you have a piece ready, and there's a little guitar there in your hands.
Yes, I
Take it
have a
away.
couple now. Am I gonna be able to do two? Because if not,
Yeah, we're gonna have you take us
All right.
out, but right now let's do one.
All right, this is gonna be this is a tune off the CD too. It's called Chagrin Falls. This is about a town near Cleveland. I used to live in Cleveland in high school, and we used to jump in the car and go out in the park and screw around out there. And this is kind of a song about that. And it goes like this.
Come on, pilot, let's go to the park. What the hell? Stay there till dark. There's a door out there I'd like to go through. Come on, let's go, there's nothing else to do. When did it happen to you? When did you glide on through? Back in Ohio, we were young after all. Pearl in the necklace, sugar in falls, a sugar in falls. Things change forever in an hour and a half. Feeling so free, I just sat down and laughed. When the tears finally came, I started to talk. What I spoke was the truth, it made no sense at all. When did it happen to you? When did you glide on through? Back in Ohio, we were young after all. Pearl in the necklace, sugar in falls. Back in Ohio, we were young after all. Pearl in the necklace, sugar in falls, sugar in falls.
Nice.
Wow.
Thank you.
That is some nice singer-songwriting there, John. John
you.
Graham here from singing from his own stuff. A little water over there.
Thanks.
I want to ask you, looking back or ahead,
Yeah.
what is the biggest shift in the music scene you've seen, and what's your favorite thing about it and least favorite thing?
Well, I mean, the music has become less music.
Uh-huh.
So in my definition of music, when I was raised on, liturgical music and then on to the great pop music of the 70s and 80s, you had all the elements of music: harmony, melody, rhythm, dynamics, lyrics, three-part vocals, all that stuff. And not completely, but by and large these days you have everything stripped down to a rhythm and a voice that's not actually even singing, that's just talking over the rhythm. So you have a lack of music, I think, in a lot of the pop music. That's not completely true. There's a lot of great stuff, a lot of great songs out there still, and I'm just talking about kind of what's topping the charts these days.
I think it's Michael's turn to ask you if you know about his son's band.
Oh, I wasn't even going to go there, but
I know,
let's
but
hear
we
it
wanna
for-
give him a chance
Speaking
to
of some
drink some water.
comprehensive music, rock and roll, Twin Peaks. And they will be at the Riviera on the day after Thanksgiving. There are a few tickets left, but not many.
All right.
They're
Twin
sold it
Peaks.
out, these young boys.
But I was mostly thinking he'd talk about the songwriting and the harmony and the
Yeah.
singing that those young
I did say
fellows-
comprehensive, because they
There
really
you
mix
go.
it up.
There you
Yeah.
go. I wasn't listening.
And we'll play some of them next week.
All right. Yeah.
How did you move
yeah.
from this childhood choir experience to plucking a guitar?
when I was in high school, so my voice changed and everything, and so all that intense
that
singing
happens in high
experience
school,
kind of
doesn't
went
it?
away. Yeah, but I stayed in the church choir or the school choirs and stuff. But
Tenor or
in
bass?
the '70s, bass. Bass.
Yeah, I can tell.
In the '70s, when I was in Cleveland, in high school, this music scene was just so happening, and there was a lot of stuff on the radio that just tweaked my ear. And I hate to say it, but Jerry Garcia's guitar did it. The Allman Brothers, Hendrix, Zappa. Yes, a lot of that stuff was just teeming, but there was so much other music going on. But anyway, my ear sort of gravitated toward the guitar. I started taking guitar lessons when I was 14, 15.
He's got one of those guitars that has the part where his fingernails go past the strings and it's all worn down.
He's got a few years to go before it's like Willie Nelson's. Though.
It actually has been worn through.
Yeah, it has been worn through.
And so this has been kind of
patched.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a clear thing on it.
Nice going. Well, once again, let's mention what's going on tomorrow, next week.
Sunday.
And we're
the
going to ask you to
17th.
sing one more time to sing us out.
Yes, I'll be down on Tour Brewing. It's on Hubbard Street between Damon and 17. What is it?
1725.
1725
West Hubbard.
I knew that. From 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Sunday the 17th. Come on out. Solo show. Kid friendly. Awesome place.
And we're going to go out with Don't Know Your Name by John Graham.
All right.
And don't mind us if we talk over it at a minute or so.
I first saw you a number of years ago in the basement bar of a southern town. Neither of us knowing just why we came or what might happen. But by night's end it became quite clear. Since then we met in so many places, from the southern delta to up north of here. Me getting older,
Live from the Heartland, we want to thank our guests this morning, Jennifer Murtoff, Mariyana, Spyropoulos, and John Graham, who's singing right now. Next week, we've got Michael Burke from the Bucket Early
Big old
Childhood
smile
Fund, Christina
and a colorful
Casiano from the
t-shirt.
American Institute, and the producers of Soul Stories.
Tattered jeans and shoes
Right.
with a smudge of
We
dirt.
encourage you to do good in the world. The world needs all the good.
I don't know your name or much else about you.
Bob Merrick, just gospel.
I'm just happy you're up here again tonight. Now you may be a Jack or you could be a Jesse, drinking fast as you laugh and spin. Daughters and sons of a restless spirit. I'm glad you came, I'm glad they let you in. I wouldn't be anywhere without you. Sitting at home or singing to my dog. Yeah. Hope you got no other plans tonight. We'll get down and play until dawn. A big old smile and a colorful t-shirt, tattered jeans and shoes with a smudge of dirt. I don't know your name or much else about you. I'm just happy you're up here again tonight. Don't know your name or much else about you. I'm just happy you're up here again tonight.
Oh, nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Thanks for coming on the show.
John, thanks so
for having
much.
me.
It's a really nice sounding guitar.